And now I am quietly waiting for the catastrophe of my personality to seem beautiful again, and heroic, and Jewish, and contemporary. Frank O'Hara, paraphrased from Mayakovsky. Talk turned one night to the subject of heroism in the modern age. At one point in the dialogue, somebody claimed, Ivy, probably, that a world that allowed for toddlers and tiaras on primetime HD television categorically could not allow for heroism on the scale of the ancients. Ours is a century of movement and of enforced travel, said Ivy, in between drags on a cigarette. It is a century that is made up of high-speed sushi, of advanced microwaves, and of extreme data sharing. All things that make for terrific ulcers, sure, and snacks, sure, and extraordinarily forgettable entertainment, sure. But not heroes, I'm afraid. Ivy, my sometimes editor, sometimes girlfriend, likes to sprinkle in bold, sweeping claims such as this one into otherwise trivial conversations. It's a technique of argument that has no doubt served her well, if only because it keeps her listeners forever running off to the dictionary in search of some phantom word or phrase or trace of logic which they will more than sometimes never find at all. Naturally, I disagreed with her. And I felt that her ideas in particular about heroism and the writer's inability to sit still had this time gone too far. By way of evidence, I told Ivy the story of Victor Hugo, how each time that he had a deadline for one of his books, he had his valet lock him up naked in his boiler room for 8 days and 8 nights so that he could, he said, commune with the cosmos without so much as the clothes on his back to distract him. Ah, said Ivy, the cosmos in 8 days. What an adventure, what nonsense. Why, any day now, it is going to turn out that one man's cosmos is no more than another's indigestion. And that what you just said to me, my friend, is tantamount to metaphysical tyranny. It's like saying that today's proper writer is heroic if he or she can sit through an entire YouTube clip without plagiarizing it. Cosmos or no, I said, suddenly very conscious of the effort it took to sit still. Anyone who survives 8 days and 8 nights in the desert, with no working Wi-Fi signal, deserves my deepest sympathies, if not public admiration. And here I very carefully failed to mention to Ivy just how well Mr. Hugo had in fact fared during his so-called heroic adventures. For all I knew, the great writer may have emerged from his boiler room with nothing but a diary of doodles and an extensive report on the leaks of his pipes. Instead, hoping to change the subject, I made the supreme mistake of telling Ivy about a show that I had been invited to read in San Francisco. A big show, in fact, for which I had nothing at all to say. This last point I kept to myself, thank God. Ah, I'm very sorry to hear that, said Ivy, scarcely listening to me any longer. And when did you say this deadline of yours was, darling? Idly, I checked the calendar on my cell phone, then hesitated, stricken by what I had seen. 8 days, I said, gazing into her eyes, which lit up with the delight of a piranha that had just sensed fresh blood, and the next thing that I knew, I was handing over to her piece by piece, in keeping with the conditions of our subsequent wager, my laptop, my bus pass, my cell phone, the keys to my apartment, and just about anything else that might distract me from my so-called inner adventure, my communion with the cosmos. Now, I'm normally shy about speaking these kinds of things out loud, discriminating about what I put into print, much like many of you perhaps. But the unfortunate circumstances of my bet with Ivy prevents me from sparing you what follows. What follows, namely, is a true, uncensored, utterly unheroic account of my 8 days, more or less, with the cosmos, and how it went so disastrously wrong. Day 1, morning. Agony, boredom, the ineffable, inexplicable terror of being alone. I take my temperature day in, day out, hoping I've died of social withdrawal, or at least that I need an ambulance to get out of here. I'm tired of the cosmos, I tell Ivy when she comes by to drop off supplies. Give me a cell phone and I'll spend the rest of my life on Twitter. Anything is better than this horror. My hero, says Ivy, laughing in my face. As she backs out of the driveway, my keys clasped firmly, terribly in hand, I'm reminded of a line by a poet, a Taoist, I think, who says, I don't know how to talk to women, and so therefore God cannot possibly exist. Day 2, morning, illness. I'm gratified to learn that I've developed a slight fever. This pleases me, because it means that this diary was not undertaken in vain. After all, it's never a healthy man who creates art, of course, but rather always, it is an unhealthy one. Pirandello's nose, Leopardi's broken spine, Proust, swaddled in the folds of his mother's skirt, snugly planted in the arms of Albertine, surrounded by medicine bottles, wheezing from all that asthma. And me, you ask, what about this hump that I've never spoken about in public and which feels to me like squeezing into a perpetually constricting corset? How do I describe it to you? Well, to quote Victor Hugo, who put these kinds of things better than I ever could, I'm sick. I'm sick and nobody feels sorry for me unless it's because I'm a hunchback, which is the least of my troubles. In short, my soul that hurts, it is my soul that hurts and not my body, since the hunch on my back doesn't cause any pain. Day 3, morning. Ivy stops by to check on me. I tell her I've decided to turn down this reading in San Francisco, that I have been giving up this ludicrous wager with the cosmos, this farce over heroic ideals. Ah, so soon, says Ivy. I wonder, what led you to that conclusion exactly? Yes, well, you know, I never did care for poetry readings all that much. All that clapping, those crowds, the contemporary museumification of everything. Well, all of it aggravates the eardrums after a while. Who am I to be museumified? Besides, all anyone would do while I read is stare at my hump. And the rest of this rather long entry on the subject against poetry readings has been excised for the sake of the author's future career and potential livelihood. Editor's note. I will not be bullied by ideals, I went on, to no one in particular, even heroic ones. It occurs to me now that I've been speaking for several minutes to myself and that Ivy has left. I check whether she has locked the door on her way out. She has. Day 4, morning. I've just found my old iPod in a sock drawer. I'm back in business. Connected by way of a neighbor's unprotected Wi-Fi signal. Merci. Today I feel as healthy as ever. Nothing further to report. Day 4.5, evening. I've just accidentally dropped my iPod in the toilet. I take back all that I said before. There is a God. She just hates me. Day 5, morning. A moral vertigo has descended. A whirling of the interior world rather than the exterior. No lines to show for myself. Not today, not for me, not for Ivy. I miss Ivy. Day 5.5, evening. This entry has also been excised. For a full account of Day 5, including the definitive explanation of why Socrates himself never actually wrote anything down, the reader is invited to turn to his or her booklet, page 76 or something like that. Doesn't matter, you're better off without it. Day 6. I've decided I will, in fact, perform a set in San Francisco, a set that consists entirely of improvised tricks and cheap jokes. And self-deprecating. No, just kidding. Let's try that again. Day 6, morning. I confirm a crisis of universalism in myself. This diary is pointless. This bed is pointless. The cosmos are pointless. As someone wiser than me once said, the Taoists, I think, in regards to the cosmos, you have to learn when to wash your nets and when to leave them out to dry. I am sick of people who tell me to concern myself with the cosmos. I haven't seen the cosmos. I don't know the cosmos. I haven't been there. In short, I'm ready to leap through this open window and not look back, to ride my bike to the sea. Day 7, morning. The sea! I've escaped to the sea. As the Taoists, I think, once said, declare now a love for all that is wet and that is not indoors. And also, abandon all diaries, especially this one. And if the Taoists never said that, they should have. Day 7.5, dusk. There's a group of children on the embankment opposite me. One in particular catches my eye. He's a fearful, reflective creature with a notebook and a smile that consists of, well, all the inanimate things which we call poetic because they please us. Flowers, sprawling fields, sunlit waters. Children, oh, glorious children, the pure rays of the sun on the vast dung heap of this world. I watch as the child dozes off and then absent-mindedly sketches in his moleskin. An unlined moleskin. It can only mean one thing. He too is not a proper writer. Then I watch the child get up from his lawn chair, perhaps to escape, and he wades far, far out into the ocean with all of his clothes still on his back. And as I get ready to leave, I hover over his open moleskin and begin to read. Dear diary, I keep waiting for the sea, like my personality, to become interesting again, as the poet said. But it doesn't, not for me anyway. If it's true that there is poetry in everything, in land and in sea, field and riverside, why is it that all I see around me is filth and malformation? There's a funny-looking indie kid with some kind of odd physical defect, a hump, a backpack, who sits nearby. He mumbles to himself like an imbecile and tries and fails to feed the turtles when he thinks that no one is looking. He looks like an old man with that ridiculous legal pad under his arm, like a pinup doll whose bones were turned inside out. If he didn't keep looking over here, I might actually be moved to feel sorry for him. His legal pad looks empty. He is not a proper writer. Day 8, epilogue. At home, evening. I tell Ivy I've confirmed that heroism is in fact not possible in our age. Whatever does exist, I say, does not occur in people, but between them. You see, over these past 8 days or so, I say, 7 days, says Ivy. Over these past 7 to 7.5 days or so, I cannot express the pains that ate into my heart. I can't count the sobs that shook me to the floor. Darling. But I have seen other things also, you see, which have brought tears to my eyes, and that have shaken me like a stirred leaf. I have seen, for instance, that there is poetry in everything, in land and in sea. There is poetry in this table, in this paper, in this inkstand, in this mic stand even. There is poetry in the rattling of the streetcars outside, in each minute, common, ridiculous gesture of a child who is, right now, no doubt, sitting on some embankment somewhere, overlooking the ocean, scribbling out primitive lines about his hero, who may or may not be deformed. And it's for this reason, Ivy, and for this reason alone, that I have decided to do the show in San Francisco. After a prolonged silence, Ivy says, apropos of I don't know what, all hail the proper poet of sang-froid, the citizen of the world, the poet dégénère supérieur. Let the tiaras reign supreme on the heads of state and on toddlers, etc., to spare the reader further pains. And then, says Ivy at last, just make sure you don't hog the stage too long. Don't ham things up too much. I nodded, sagely, appreciative, before rushing off to the dictionary in order to make sense of what she had said. And also, finally, to decide how to begin. Thank you.